Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I am your podcast host, Danny Vicente, and this is Coffee and Conversations, a place where we explore topics in technology, leadership, and innovation. Discussions about things that are keeping you up at night with industry experts, technology experts, and so much more. So grab your cup of coffee and join us as we dive in. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Thank you for joining another episode of Coffee and Conversations. We are jumping again into transportation. And so you're going to recognize one of the voices, but we do have a new voice on the podcast that I will have introduce himself in a moment. But if you didn't catch our last conversation in transportation, we talked rail, and I'm going to play a little snippet for you right here.
Rewind a few years back to March, April of 2020. There was a significant drop in ridership in rail. Now today, that ridership level has gone back up to close to pre-pandemic levels. To make up lost revenue and also just to gain new ridership, these rail operators need to deliver a modern passenger experience. And so I think today we can all agree that passengers have pretty high digital expectations and want everything on time and on demand and seamless. And
Great. And as usual, folks, we do have some links down below. So I'm going to link that episode in case you missed it down below. You can go and listen to that one. But today we're not talking rail. We are talking another form of transportation, and that is airports. This one takes you a little further than rail, I think. But we're gonna discuss all things airports, and you're gonna hear again a familiar voice in Laura. And I'm gonna let her introduce herself real quick, and then we will jump in and let our new voice introduce himself. Laura?
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me back. My name is Laura Perrick. I am the Global Industry Lead for Transportation on Cisco's Industry Solutions Group team.
Awesome. Welcome back. Clearly, I didn't scare you enough on the last one. And so, Alex, if you could, for one moment, give a quick intro to yourself.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm with Cisco's IoT Vertical Acceleration team. So we're a global team looking at transportation in all of its forms, and been working with airports for quite some time. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I haven't really used an airport in a few years, and we all know the rationale as to why. And in fact, the last time I used the airport, I want to say was 2 years ago, and it was the best airport experience I've ever had in my life, because I walked in and I was one of like 3 people in the entire place, and I got on the plane and I was through the whole thing. I am flying again in about a week and a half, and I have a feeling it's going to be a different experience. So tell me a little bit about what's top of mind for airports in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick it off here. And happy we're having this conversation about airports, because there's a lot to talk about today. So as you're talking about, Danny, the industry of airports has faced a lot of challenges over the last few years, and that was complicated by the pandemic. So I'm surprised it's been a few years since you've traveled. I think it was about 2 years for me before I was back in an airport, but I have gone on a few trips since then. But definitely complicated by the pandemic, and the volume of air travel passengers is now on the rise. And we're seeing significant investments being made. So a lot of that's coming through public funding, but other sources as well. So that's certainly, when you talk about top of mind, it's how are those investment funds going to be spent to create more operational efficiency, but there's also a greater focus on passenger experience. So on the passenger experience side, the airport operations side, both in the terminal and on the air side. And airports are looking to leverage technology to really improve the way they operate. Alex, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, just so right back to full travel for business and for leisure. And I can say from personal experience, Danny, airports are back to where they were and beyond from pre-pandemic. It's really a quick bounce back. It was really surprised the whole industry. Nobody was, we all went into this global uncertainty, but everything was on the rise already. It's accelerating. And I think there's a shift in how people are living and working around the world, and that is being seen in the aviation sector. So there's more people, there's different people moving through the airport. People are moving more frequently, and they have an expectation of what we did in the last 3 years at home that has to continue all the way along the journey. We have to be connected. It's like oxygen. And so we're seeing all of this technology related conversation with our aviation customers because travel is on the rise and it's here to stay.
You bring up a great point. That makes a lot of sense now with our remote capabilities of getting on planes and working from anywhere. So I would see that. So you mentioned customers on the rise. You mentioned expectations. So let's dive a little bit into that because I know customer experience becomes the priority for a lot of industries, and I would imagine airports are no different. So what are we seeing there, and how are we addressing that with our technology?
Yeah, I love this question because I feel like it's so relatable to everyone listening. We've all had really great airport experiences, and we've had maybe some of those that were not so positive. But the good thing is we're seeing a really increased focus on investment to create that modern passenger experience. And Danny, we talked about that on the rail podcast as
Absolutely.
well, about the modern passenger experience in rail. We're absolutely seeing that in airports as well. We're even seeing some airports in regions of the world branding themselves as a destination themselves. So offering kind of unique entertainment or high-end retail experience to differentiate themselves and provide that again overall better traveler and passenger experience. When we look at how airports are even ranked, it's for food, for shopping, for amenities, but it's also for their cleanliness or their ability to manage the flow of people in the terminal, which speaks to the operational side of the airport. So no surprise, airports want to find themselves at the top of those lists, best of lists, and so they're looking at ways to address that. When I think about how Cisco plays in that space and really is focusing on use cases, there's many areas, but some of those are around the mobile experience, so connecting your
Sure.
device, and then some of the digital services that airports are offering as well.
When you talk mobile services, I'm probably going to ask a very naive question here, but similar to the rail, are we talking just simply having Wi-Fi in the airports, or what are we talking about when we're talking mobile services?
Yeah, so well, like everyone, we're all tied to our devices, right?
Sure.
It's for information, for communication, even how you pay for things now. And so when you're in the airport, you need that continuous connectivity. And when we look at that wireless connectivity in the airport, to your point, we think about Wi-Fi. And it's similar how we tackle how we do that connectivity in large venues. So we think about stadiums where there's high density usage. And so kind of that first step in that mobile experience is you have to have coverage in that large venue. The next piece is really how we think about how users will actually get on the network and gain access. So that's where we're focused on that seamless and secure onboarding to the network. So some airports use a captive portal. I'm sure you've seen that. You select the
Yep.
Wi-Fi, it pops up, you agree to terms. Some others are starting to use other methods like scanning of a boarding pass to get access to the network, or even through messaging apps. So looking at different ways to provide that seamless experience. Alex, anything
It's
else?
the connectivity at airports is it's similar to rail, Danny. I think the baseline is you expect to be connected, but it's even more significant of a customer experience touch point for the airports because it is the first thing that a passenger does when they touch down is turn on from wherever they've landed from around the
Of
world
course.
is turn on their device, right? And they may not have a local plan in the country that they're landing. They may be on a data restricted plan. They need to get online to be able to figure out where they're going, make sure that they're safe, check in with their loved ones back home, and just exist in the modern economy. And so that seamless, frictionless onboarding as quickly as possible and with as many different identity services and identity brokers as possible is really, really important so that we can handle huge numbers of people moving through the airports, but it really becomes an easy place to be welcoming to the customers. Of course, some airports you want to get in and out as quickly as possible because you want to get to your journey. What Laura said about the destination, it's important. That goes to the revenue stream for the airports.
Of course.
The airports want you to have a great experience because that's how they make a lot of money, is keeping you there, keeping you buying from duty free, consuming services. there is another piece to this, which is really important. And we see more of our airport customers looking at the data that comes off the network. So we got to get you on, right? We need to make it easy to get on the network. But using the data that we can get from our sensors in the buildings, from the Wi-Fi network, from the mobile devices themselves, allows us to figure out how people are moving through the environment, like large venues. It also helps us figure out where we can sell better retail and concessionaire pricing so that we can uh, contribute to our business model. So the data that comes out of the network is as important as pure network access. Network access is the baseline, but then we can do more because we can see all the way across that environment.
I love that. And you both use large venue, and as you both know, I cover the sports world in my 9 to 5, and so we're constantly talking about everything that you just said with all these folks trying to get around, and wayfinding ends up happening to be one. So tracking those people and figuring out where they're going is a big piece. I want to touch on the retail, however, because I noticed as I go to a lot of airports, they're massive and they're becoming like large malls that just happen to have planes waiting for you outside. So let's talk about that retail component and what we're doing in that environment in the airports as well.
Alex, do you want
Well,
to?
I think it yeah, it starts with the data. It starts with being able to understand and really not necessarily target a particular person, but understand the trends of where types of people, where types of origin and destination traffic is moving through the environment. Because if I know that I've got a connection from international transfers through a particular part of my terminal on that path where those people move, I'm more likely to market to them things that are going to be more attractive to that type of a demographic. And I can do that because I can understand how people are moving through that environment. But it also is interesting things like uh, 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 on a phone, figuring out the food that you want and having it delivered at your gate, and maybe having that delivered to you by a human or maybe by a robot that's bringing it to the gate side, so you can shorten your connection. There's some really interesting ways we can develop better retail experiences than standing in line to buy a packet of peanuts and a bottle of water before you get on the next flight.
I love that. Folks, I am going to remind you, we do have a bunch of links down below. So as we are discussing various topics and you want to dig into it a little bit further, please click those links down below. And as usual, we have an Ask Us link. And being Alex is the new guy, we're going to send all of the questions to Alex. And he's promised to stay up all weekend taking care of that for us. So please do send in your questions and I'll make sure to keep him busy over the weekend. You mentioned kind of having your food or using your mobile device to get around. So it tells me that we don't want to treat each person like a mass, right? We want personalization when they're getting onto that mobile device. So what are we seeing airports do, and how are we addressing that aspect?
Yeah, a few ways of that. I would say Alex mentioned one of those, which is the wayfinding.
Yep.
So knowing the device, having that connected, how are you going to move throughout the airport? Everything from um, where you're going in the security line, where your gate is, knowing where your favorite coffee spot is, how to get there. When you're used to spending a lot of time in maybe your home airport, those things, right? You have it, especially if you're a business traveler, you have those things down pat. But when you're in a new airport, you might need some assistance doing that. You might have a shorter connection time and want to pick up something for lunch. So having that wayfinding, being able to find your way through this large facility is a big piece of that. And then also we talk about the contactless journey of how people are traveling throughout the airport. So it's really became top of mind during the pandemic, but it does continue. So it can apply at check-in through the boarding process, payment systems. The goal there being really to reduce physical touch points and ultimately reduce the spread of germs, but also to make it an easier passage throughout the airport.
I always think of it as the onboarding piece as being the no touch, but yeah, that's a great point, bringing that whole thing up. So as we kind of take a larger look, if we start looking at the airport from the terminal perspective, I'm imagining there's quite a few things happening around that experience as well. And so what are we doing and what are we seeing when it comes to terminals?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and Alex, if you want to add some stuff. I would say the technology that we see in other smart buildings can be applied to airports as well. So we talk about sensors for tracking environmental conditions. That could be both inside the terminal as well as more out in the airfield and operational area. It can be sensors for tracking assets, high value assets, carts, those type of things. And it can also be cameras for tracking people movement. So that can be used for the things that Alex mentioned earlier, but it can also be used for safety and for surveillance purposes. And then I think we talked a little bit about the passenger flow piece as well, but I'd like to tie that to smart buildings, just overall improving the terminal operations, and that can be something as simple as understanding your cleaning operations, how many people are moving in and out of your bathrooms, and making sure you're sending cleaning crews in when it makes the most sense. I would say the last piece I'll add on, and Alex can elaborate on this piece as well, but is some of the benefits of deploying the sensors and the intelligent systems in the terminal is that they can be used to better manage energy load and energy consumption.
That's great.
And, Cisco has net zero goals. Many airports, all airports have net zero goals, right? Just depending on the date that they're targeting. But those type of solutions around managing that energy load, energy consumption can help towards those net zero goals.
Absolutely. The net zero initiatives that everyone has to contribute to globally, right? This is an imperative, are being focused at places like airports because they represent many different pieces of places where we can make a difference, right? Electrified fleets, the baggage carts that move people around, maybe those robots that are delivering you your grab and go food are electric. We need to look at the battery levels and make sure that the network is intelligent enough in the terminal to figure out when they need to go back to their charging station. The bathrooms themselves, the sensors, making sure that it's a great place to be. But if there aren't people there, that using our smart building technologies, we can turn down the electric load for the heating and cooling or the lighting in that terminal wing. That's something hard for a lot of our airports to do. Is they've got big energy budgets, they've got big, fairly old infrastructure in many places around the world, and so using some of those smart building techniques is really impactful in making a difference in how the terminal runs, but also how much it costs to operate. And we see the same thing outside. We see in our parking lots where they might be electric vehicles and they're putting in lots of charging, or it might be just in there to say, where can I park and quickly get to the terminal on the air side? How can I look at my vehicles? Everything that's scurrying around on the air side are being targeted to move to electric because it's a natural place to move big fleets quickly. And so the network, the intelligent network, needs to follow that so we can build towards net zero initiatives in our environments.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit, and Laura, you remember this question because I asked it during the rail one. But anytime I hear a lot of change, and I've heard a lot of change from a customer experience and from the terminal operations, and we're talking about sustainability a bit there, I just kind of try to put myself in our customer shoes. And you talked about prioritizing funds and where we're going to invest, and it all sounds like a lot. So I have to ask, where do we start? Where does somebody in this industry, when they're looking at their airport, thinking, oh my gosh, where do they start? What do they look at?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of initiatives that are happening inside airports, and so it's important to prioritize those. Some airports are having a chief sustainability officer that's really looking at those goals and prioritization, where they're getting funding and how that's applied, even other implications of investing in these more sustainable solutions. And so I think Alex mentioned electrification. That's a great place to look at. The other one, we talk about reducing energy consumption, but you need to be able to measure that first.
Sure.
So are you deploying those energy management sensors and software to be able to understand how you're consuming that energy today to be able to make smarter decisions in the future? So I would think that's a great place to start as well.
I love that.
One of the things, Danny, we're seeing at the airports is ultimately their business model is to make it great to be at if you want to stay, easy to get through if you want to move through quickly, and efficient to move passengers and planes in and out of the facility. And so where we start is with that conversation, which is Cisco has lots of breadth. We have lots of different technology solutions that can help with onboarding the passenger or help with connecting the crazy looking vehicles that bring your baggage to the plane. But all of those places need to connect better. There's an airline CEO that is talking about moving to a blameless culture, because we have 7, 8 different departments that all have to service a plane, and they're currently incentivized to blame each other. Maybe they blame the airport, maybe they blame their peer in order to not have it fall on them. But that doesn't help reduce gate turn time. That doesn't help to the passenger experience. The airport has to be able to demonstrate and work out some of these inefficiencies. And so really it's a conversation with Cisco about, can you help me connect my things? Can you help me get the data from where it is generated to where it needs to go? Can you help me make a better retail experience? Bring in the breadth of practice we have from utilities and smart cities and retail and large venues. That's a unique advantage of working with Cisco, is that we've got this breadth of visibility across many industries, and airports are kind of an intersection of many, many different big markets. And so we can bring best practices into that environment and really help drive, which many other many other companies can't do. So really, it's an open conversation. We're here from Cisco. How can we help?
I love that, and it's something, Alex, that I say quite often on these podcasts is look at Cisco as a partner, right? Come talk with us and leverage our knowledge and our visibility into all these other companies and industries, and let's leverage it all to make your environment perfect, or as perfect as we can get it. So folks, we do, again, just a reminder that we have a bunch of links down below. Please click those links. I'm sure you are hearing a few things that are intriguing you. So please click them down below and dive in. And remember, every question is heading Alex's way. So please click the Ask Us question and submit, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. Okay, Alex, you mentioned something on there. You were talking about the EVs outside. And so I would imagine from an airport, we're not just talking about inside, and we are talking about the traffic congestion that comes along with it, because that is an experience that we all have. So can we talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we're seeing, and you said it exactly right, Danny. It's not Airports are not just buildings where we wait for planes. They're big campuses. They're small cities, effectively. And one of the big challenges we see globally is the approach and uh, leaving the airport, right? The roadway network that feeds them. And we all have all been stuck in traffic waiting to be dropped off by our Uber, or waiting for our loved one to pick us up, where they can't get to the airport for hours, to the curb for hours after the flight's landed because it's too congested. But one thing we're doing with our airport customers is taking our best practices from our connected roadways solutions, where we're digitizing roadway corridors all over the
I
world,
love that.
bringing them to deploy better technology at the edge to see where the cars are, maybe change the light timings, do transit signal prioritization so that the buses that are moving people around get priority to get a whole row of green lights going down. Things that we have really been well developed in for DOTs, for instance, helping implement those for our airport customers as well. And that has a direct impact on the overall passenger journey. If you spend less time waiting in traffic, yes, there's a sustainability upside, but really just it's better to do if we can
Yeah.
move in and out of the airport. And that's an example of some of those cross industry things that we can do as Cisco that other companies have are more challenged to do
Yeah, I think
together.
the connected rail piece is as well, Alex. I know you've worked on with several customers around that piece, and how great is it when you have a light rail system that goes to the airport, and that seamless transition, not having to sit in traffic to do that. So I think the connected rail piece and some of those use cases we have there can apply to this as well.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And folks, I'm going to link the connected rail down below, as I mentioned earlier. But an oldie but a goodie. We did talk about just roads in general and transportation. I'm going to link that one down below, and you'll have a familiar voice on that one, as Andy Manuel joined us on that podcast several months ago. I do want to touch on something, because as we're talking about that aspect of the airport, it reminds me of the ground operations piece of the airport, because that's another piece I'm sure that airports are really caring about. What are we seeing? What are we seeing there, and how is that kind of changing?
It's I'll take that one, Laura, if you're okay. Um,
Yeah.
it's a super compelling, interesting place for our airports right now, and it's hard. Cisco is helping them because we can provide that complete network connectivity conversation, from the crazy looking bespoke vehicles that de-ice the planes or plow the runways or bring the baggage to the facility, to more traditional vehicles that maybe look at a perimeter road and make sure that there's no bad people coming onto the airfield, looking at the gate access or the security perimeter. there's lots of places in the ground operations of positioning cargo, positioning people, positioning fuel assets, of basically supporting flight operations where our network connectivity tied into what we can do in the building and in the cloud is really, really powerful in providing a platform for the future. So we see some airports looking at fully autonomous operations for their de-icing or for their snow clearing. That's really interesting because of the robotics innovation that's happening. These are places like mines and ports and other sort of fenced-in areas that are getting there quicker. It kind of ties into the electrification, and so that could be in the future. Some places it's really far in the future. For a lot of the airports, it's providing the same level of connectivity on the AOA, the airside operations, and the ground operations where the people move around in their personal cars, providing the same level of network experience as you expect in the terminal, so that there should be no difference for an airport operator being in the terminal where passengers are, being below the terminal where the baggage handling is, being outside servicing the plane, or kilometers away at the fence line. The pervasive network that supports that is super important to help them get towards that more efficient future. It's a really fun area for Cisco to be looking, and it's somewhere that that maybe you don't expect. You think of Cisco as the great Wi-Fi in the terminals, but we also have great experiences and great technology for helping digitize the whole space.
Yeah, and I would I would add that we have whole programs and whole teams inside Cisco dedicated to working with customers to adopt innovative technology. The types of things that Alex was mentioning around that full coverage in the outdoor environment, the perimeter security, the autonomous operations, stuff around IoT and 5G. And our country digital acceleration program is driving, I think it's now at over 30 active major transportation initiatives around the globe. And that's happening both with private and public sector organizations in transportation. So some really, really cool stuff coming out of that team. We're also seeing it's not always just about the hardware and the software and the services. That team's also investing in future generation workforce through our kind of CAD program. So some really neat stuff happening there.
That's awesome. So the autonomous, the sensors, everything that you just mentioned. First off, it's exciting because I've been on a plane when they de-iced it, and I thought that was the craziest looking vehicle on the planet. And now to not have somebody inside that, have it autonomous, that's mind blowing. But all of these things scream at me as potential inlets for bad people to do bad things. And so I got it. I feel bad, but I feel like we have to talk about security because as we're connecting all these things, it's all possible breach areas. So let's talk what we're doing and what we're seeing in that realm.
It's it is the right question to ask because you don't want to take two steps forward and one step off a cliff,
Yeah.
right? As you provide better connectivity across all of these areas, you have to do it in a flexible and intelligent way where we allow the OT professionals that are running these airports and doing a really good job to not have to change their way of business as they bring in digital connectivity into their vehicles or into their operations, into their OT things. Same thing in the terminals. Our more traditional IT, enterprise IT technologies, there's a lot of people that would love to do nothing more than mess up an airport because they're going to get national headlines and they become really critical points in the economy. So as much as we want to connect everything, we have to do it safely. Now, one of the powerful things of working with Cisco is that we think from the product design through the architectures, the implementation, the whole life cycle of cybersecurity. It's not a bolt-on afterthought where you stick a firewall somewhere and hope. It's all the way from the routers and switches that are at the edge of the network, touching the fuel distribution network or touching the flight operations for air traffic control, all the way through to how do we securely onboard you and make sure that you get the services you need. Your personal mobile device gets the services you need, but you're not able to get into places in the network that you shouldn't. And we continuously improve. There is never will be, and never has been a single thing you can buy that says, okay, done. Cybersecurity, check. I never need to come back to it. It's an iterative approach. And so we build these architectures, this expertise in the products to be able to let the data flow, get the advantage of this fully connected future, but do it safely.
Love that. I do want to jump into something. You mentioned it in your answer there with security, and we talked about it a moment ago, but it just came to my mind. Electrification is happening everywhere. So you're going to have these autonomous vehicles, you're going to have ground transportation, you have all these different things. I would imagine, though, the airports themselves, with the buses that where they're moving folks around, and we're talking sustainability down to that level as well, or electrification of that as well. So I would imagine there's sensors and all kinds of things coming into play there, or am I crazy?
You're exactly right. Laura, you mentioned it before. As much as we have this initiative towards net zero electrification, all of these sustainable and environmentally more responsible ways of operating these critical sites, one thing that we're seeing challenged at many airports is proving it. So using the network to, let's say, look at the water retention ponds to know that the new way of putting de-icing fluid on planes is actually having an effect in producing less pollution into the water catchment, or looking at how we operate the buildings and understand that, okay, we asked to turn down the power in this part of the airport. Did it actually happen? Are we seeing a change in the actual environment? So it's this dual sensing layer and doing layer that we can build into the networks. It's super important. It's not just this beautiful future where everything's electric and autonomous, which is debatable if we ever want to get there. It's also taking practical steps right now to be able to see what's happening on our roads, on our airside, in our terminals, because data drives better decision making, and we can get better data by putting in the network in the places where it needs to be.
I'm always amazed whenever we talk sustainability or that kind of thing is the sensors and data we're getting from places are places I would never would have thought of, but they're so important when you dive down into that level. And so I love hearing you talk about even the water that we're using for the de-icing and that kind of thing. It's an amazing thing. I want to be conscious of the time, and so I want to ask you guys a fun question from my perspective, and that is, I want you to put your magic hat on and your crystal ball, and what is the future of airports? Where are we headed? Where are we going?
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of it we covered today. It's IoT and the sensors that are going into the environment to improve operations, improve that passenger experience. Getting even more granular with the data, you know, managing the lighting and the temperature, and those type of things in that environment, making sure that there's real time information to passengers about their flight and their gate information. Obviously, that also leads to a better passenger experience when you have that data as well. The automation and robotics. Alex mentioned it earlier. Having it could be having your club sandwich delivered to your gate by a robot. It could also be the autonomous vehicles going across the perimeter to maintain security. So there's a lot of different areas we're seeing can be applied to automation. I think that the other things, just the contactless journey, thinking about future needs there, and then sustainability is obviously always top of mind.
Awesome.
What else did I miss there, Alex?
I don't think you missed anything. I think where I hope airports and all of our transportation infrastructure, but airports, I spend so much time in them. This is personal for me, but sometimes I want it to be something that I didn't think twice about. It's just invisible. I get there, I get through security, I'm on my flight, and I don't even remember. I was on a call all the way through, and I can't even remember that I went through the airport. I want that, but I also want it to be a place that I want to go. I want it to be a place that I can say, you know what, I'm planning my day. That's a wonderful place for me to spend 12 hours, not because I'm sitting in a gate side seat waiting to board because my flight's delayed, but because I can collaborate, I can meet with people, I can buy the things I want to do, I can experience local culture. They are destinations in some way. So hopefully we can help our airports kind of get to this two legs of the experience, right? Make it super easy to get through, and make it a place where it's compelling as a business traveler, maybe as a digital nomad. Certainly, when I bring my family, I want the access to the whole economy around me. I don't just want it to be a sort of a negative part of my journey.
Yeah, I don't know, Alex, if I'm with you on the 12 hours. That might be a bit much for me, But you made a great point there. Maybe we could pause on that. Is the hybrid work component? Like people traveling through the airport, they're traveling to meet with customers or to have internal meetings. But while they're doing that, they need to remain connected. They need to jump on a WebEx meeting or be collaborating with teams online. And so that's not just, and I think Alex, you mentioned earlier, it's not just a nice to have, it's a must have when you're traveling for business. And so I think these solutions that airports are deploying around that passenger experience need to consider that hybrid worker and traveling worker as well.
I love those answers. And folks, I'm going to remind you one last time about the links down below, as well as the Ask Us Anything button. And if your first question is not when do we get Airports #2 podcast, then I don't know what questions you're asking, but feel free to put those down below. I feel like we touched on a lot. And I feel like we only touched the surface. I feel like there's a lot of stuff there. So I want to make sure, folks, that you have an opportunity to get those questions answered as well. So please do engage with us. We have come towards the end of the podcast. And Alex, if you've listened to any of the podcasts before, you know what's coming. And if you haven't, this is my favorite part of the podcast. Laura already knows. She's already prepared for this question. But so I'm not going to let her answer first. I'm going to put you on the spot. So if you are like me, you were preparing last night or 2 days ago for this podcast thinking, okay, Danny's going to ask me X and I'm going to answer this way. And then he's going to ask me this and I'm going to answer this way. And inevitably, because I am who I am, I didn't ask you those questions. And so this is your opportunity to answer the question I didn't ask, or it is your last moment to say, okay, if the audience is going to take one piece away from this podcast, what is that one piece?
On the one piece, I think, Cisco has a lot of experience. We're full of passionate people about technology. We tend to look at the world through a technologist's lens, and that's important. But we also understand that we can't do this alone. It's about partnership. It's about innovation in these environments for the people, for the technology. So if you leave with one thing, if you're in the aviation sector, if this is interesting, let's engage, because I know we have something that we can help with today, but we are on this journey together. And ultimately, when transportation is better, the whole world is better. So this is an important thing to work on. We're here to help.
Great answer. And Laura, just because you knew it was coming doesn't mean you're off the hook. You have to answer as well.
No, I love what Alex said, and I think that just to double down on that, we have a deep bench of expertise here, but also it's about our partner ecosystem and our collaboration across that ecosystem. We have some really cool solutions that are being deployed to airports today, I think, to our Cisco Spaces team. And so definitely check out the links, reach out to us to have that conversation about where you want to go with your airport, or if you are in solutioning in this space, like where are you taking your customers, and we'd love to be part of that conversation.
Awesome. Well, folks, if you enjoyed the conversation today, please stay tuned, because this is a series. As you can tell, this is our third conversation in transportation, and it won't be our last. Laura, Alex, seriously, I learned quite a bit. I feel like I have another 100 questions in my back pocket that I could ask you that we didn't get to, so I will probably just be pinging you guys later. But thank you both. I learned a lot. I think our audience learned a lot, and I enjoyed our conversation. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Danny.